das ist schon, natürlich die Leute laufen währenddessen. Besser wäre sich hinzusetzen. Das war ich auch noch für auf, weil die Zeit weg dafür. Ja, wenn ich mal aus der Schule komme und mitarbeiten muss, dann muss ich nicht mehr das machen. Ja, deswegen ist das so mal. Das ist einfach mal so. Das Ding ist halt, wenn du Leute filmst, ich weiß immer nicht, ob das rechtlich voll in Ordnung war. Das ist auch einfach. Funktion Erwachsener. Man steht oben drauf. Ich hab das mal gemacht, da bin ich zu einer Frau gegangen und hab gesagt, wenn Sie rauchen, machen das die Kinder nach. Ja, das sieht die gar nicht. Aber so ist es. Sowas bestimmt machen. Ich war zwar klein und eigentlich schüchtern, aber ich war schon so ein bisschen draufgängerisch. Ist mir früher nie so aufgefallen. Und das habe ich mir eigentlich auch mein Leben lang erhalten, dass ich einfach so sage, ich springe einfach mal rein und guck, was passiert. morgens noch in eine entspannte Welt. Das habe ich auch immer gemocht, so Hose ziehen, aber im Grunde, das machst du 15 Mal, willst nie was, dann denkst du irgendwann so, das ist wie ein Lottospiel, das verarschen. Weil wenn du wirklich was erreichen willst im Leben, dann musst du dafür arbeiten. Ich habe halt gesagt, für mich ist es das mit YouTube, mit Büchern schreiben. Ich lasse mich dann halt vom Leben auch unterstützen, was ich ja gesagt habe. Meine Eltern sagen, okay, wir helfen dir. Ich nehme es an, weil Hilfe muss man auch annehmen können. Das ist auch die Herausforderung. Weil viele ja direkt von Anfang an sagen, so, du musst alles alleine machen. Aber im Grunde machst du nichts alleine. Weil Essen ist auch Hilfe von der Natur. So alles, was wir haben, es kommt alles aus der Natur. Das vergessen die Leute halt manchmal. Wir selbst, das Plastik kommt aus der Natur. Alles hier, alles. Asphalt, alles aus der Natur. Und der Mensch tut so, als hätte er das alles selber gemacht. Ganz neu erschaffen. Ja. Nicht aus Dinge, dass wir das machen. Ja. Aber es muss halt trotzdem, und das war halt früher die Mentalität, dass man sagt, auch Dankbarkeit der Natur gegenüber, Natur auch erhalten.
I decided to call this video In Between Worlds. And well, anybody who has seen the video will realize what the relevance of that title is. Now, I don't really want to give you all the information there is all the time, which I also don't, and I make sure that I hide certain things, methods. I hide certain insights deliberately inside my content, so that when you want to get to where I got, and you think you can just buy a book and read it, and I'm simply gonna make it like very easy for you, then you are very much mistaken. Because what you have to understand is how it would have been maybe 200 years ago, and how it still is in tribes in the Amazonian rainforest, or wherever there is people who still live the natural way, the way of healing, the way of spirit. I would have been a shaman in the village. By now I can say that my apprenticeship, like at least my first wiggly steps, are kind of over, and I have managed to come a certain way. But there is no other shaman that says to me, this is what you must do.
Es ist halt aber auch mehr aus,
Right? I have this inner voice
nach 2 Jahren
that guides me.
halt dann guckst, 2
And when I read the books or listen to them in the form of an audiobook from Carlos Castaneda,
musst einfach weitermachen.
I can learn from Don Juan.
Alles was, einfach weitermachen.
And maybe I have what he calls an ally.
Heißt ja nicht, dass ich mein Leben lang YouTube mache.
I have no idea.
Aber irgendwas mache ich halt.
The only thing I know is that there is a voice, and this voice is telling me to do things. And I do them. And sometimes I have to do things first before I can do other things. And then sometimes the sheer amount of work that I have to put in before I can do something else is making me a little bit angry.
Aber so richtig lange dauert
But that's okay because I know how to use my anger to work hard instead of allowing it to press me into the couch. Now, what I want to get into in this is a couple of circumstances that I have come across, and also the way I decided to deal with them. First of all, people are kind of lonely these days. The previous video
Plankton,
was called
ganz kleine Organismen, bis
something like I Need a Friend, right? Yeah, sure, man. Sometimes I listen to Terence McKenna because I have days where I feel like I'm simply not enough. And what I realize is I rather listen to Terence McKenna on most days than having to listen to people all the time. Because I'm not really anybody's friend, right? Nobody can really claim me as their friend, and I make sure it is so. Right? I mean, I know by now enough people in the city, and any one of them could be my friend. But I make sure that anybody who thinks they can use me as an extension of themselves will very soon not want to do that anymore. And I do this by being a little bit scary, a little bit unpredictable, by having no really fixed patterns, and by making sure that nobody can really pin me down. Right, so sometimes I go into the city and I talk to people, and most of my conversations have a little to a lot of depth to them. And some people get a lot of my time, and some people get a little less of my time. And depending how you are, and how I feel about you, right, I may take you along and teach you a few things, or I may just let you sit where you are. Because if I constantly have to work through your bullshit to get to you, then I am just going to say, hey, sorry man, but all the information is out there, and you take everything as an excuse to be lazy and miserable. You want to talk to me about hard work? Right, I know what hard work is. Yeah, only I don't measure it in money. And that's already the first thing that I simply want to talk about. Because you may understand how it pisses me off. If people look at me and they say like, you know, they don't openly say it, but you can see it, the way they are towards me. And with the air, they speak to me, right? They say like, oh yeah, sure, you're smart, you can talk nice, but, right? There's always this but. Sometimes they say the but, and sometimes the but is just reverberating into the room. It's like, yeah, I know it's there, man. And I literally don't care, because I know the but. I know all the buts that you have for me, right? I know them all the excuses why you can't like me, or why my job isn't really a job because it's not for the industry, and why my job is a fantasy. You know what my job is? It's taking shit from people and doing something nice with it. And that's, I would say, the hardest part of all, because at the end of the day, I still want to smile. Right? And then I really make sure, because today, and also yesterday, I was a bit more amongst people, but I also realized, you know, I don't want it. I may feel lonely sometimes, but I can carry that feeling into nature, and then rather connect with nature than with people that feel lonely. Because people that feel lonely are needy, and needy people are very desperate for friends. And I say my friend is nature, because nature actually heals me, while all I get from the people I spend time with is shit. Sure, I know how to heal myself. I can take the shit and bring it into nature and wash myself clean there. But there's also a certain extent to which I can do this before I simply say, yeah, I need my time out now. And, you know, when it's about between two worlds, I mean, that's basically the shaman's job, right? He dives into consciousness, he dives into darkness, and he brings things back into the light. And some of these things he brings to the people, but mostly his job is simply to communicate with spirit. And shamans usually spend a lot of time alone in the forest, talking to spirits. You know, some of them use psychedelic plants, some of them use other kinds of methods to get to different states of consciousness. Flagellation is one of them. I believe methods like Paidalajin is another one. You know, there are all kinds of ways to heal and to transform and to focus and to communicate. And I'm aware of some of them. And so, sure man, when I go into the city and I feel drawn to a place where I can do some exercises, although I do feel a little bit like overwhelmed and I just want to go back and just do my own thing and just be alone. There's something that keeps me in the city, right? And I go to a park, to the workout park, and there are people who sit on benches and they're drunk, and I see this guy and he's sitting there and I think, man, what are you doing here? You know, I really had this feeling, you don't belong here. I mean, it's not that you don't have the right to sit there and get drunk, but it's, I mean, you have more potential than to waste away between or next to people who just piss themselves because they're really far away. And even they have things to say, right? Even they speak truth when you know how to hear it. Right? I mean, some of the smartest people that I meet live on the streets. Not because they're just idiots, but because they simply see society for what it is, and they just feel like they have nothing to give to it, but here, this is it, man. I mean, I really feel like we need homeless people just to show that there are people who look for freedom. But the problem is some of them look for freedom in alcohol. Yeah, it's a way to live. But it's also a very numb way to live. And I'm trying to live more consciously. And sometimes I feel like I'm being sent somewhere. And then it's getting a little bit uncomfortable for me. Sure. Then I go to someone and I say, hey man, can I ask you a question? You know, it's a very, very delicate thing to go to somebody who deliberately sits with somebody who just pissed himself and gets drunk with him. Right, it's a very delicate thing to go there and say, hey man, what are you doing here? I mean, what is your profession? I mean, what are you doing? And he tried to, because I said to him, you know, I just had the feeling, I walked past you and I had the feeling, you don't belong here. You know, I don't know where you belong, but you certainly don't belong here. I mean, when you spend a lot of time with drunks, it's very, very easy to become a drunk. You know, it's like, you make yourself comfortable and you act like one of them, but you're not one of them. And they know it. Because what's actually happening, you know, you're taking your sweet time with them. You think you're taking care of them? No, man. The homeless guy is being a friend to you. You need a friend. You go to homeless people. You think you help them. No, man. They're helping you. You feel lonely. Homeless people are homeless people. They live that way. That's their life. You're just spending time with them because you're lonely. And you could do other things. Maybe you have a degree. Maybe you know how to talk, how to articulate. So do something with that. Do you think my life is easy? You know, I go there and you know, when I talk to people these days, you know, I'm at least trying to be like a friend. You know, I won't be around all the time, but at least the idea they have of me will be like, you know, alright. At the very least, he's not vicious, yeah? Because I work with that. When anger rises inside of me, I see anger rising and, you know, that's all it is. You know, I just stay there, don't have to shout. But people certainly go to great length to get me to shout, just by attacking me and showing me what they think are my flaws or my errors, right? So I go to them, and it's like, you know, one really homeless guy who pissed himself and two guys who just sit there and get drunk with him. And first there was only one, and I go to him and I say, hey, what's going on, man? Like, what are you doing here? And then he starts diverting, he starts asking me questions, and I said, like, don't avoid the question. Like, what are you doing here? You know, you don't belong. And he says, yeah, you're right, I actually don't belong here. But where do you belong? I don't know. But that's for you to figure out. All I can say is that for me, that is also uncomfortable. Because now I may have to stand there and listen to your sob story. Because you don't want to tell it to yourself. Right? Or maybe you're telling it to yourself and you should just get out of it. Like, what's your excuse to just waste away and waste your potential into masturbation and all these kinds of things? Like, what's your excuse? You know, I'm not quite sure. If you have one, like one that's very solid, I mean a very solid excuse. I mean, there are people that have no legs and they smile more often than some people that have legs and all the wealth that you can imagine. Right? So the point, just why this video and why this topic? Because I went to the fair, and because someone was with me, I made sure that, yeah, you mostly cannot see who was with me and you cannot hear the voice. Because when I spend time with people, sometimes they also open up to me and they say things, and that should be kept private. You know, I may talk about generally how people feel, but I'm never gonna reveal what other people said in my presence. Because I could say it all, you know, I know everything that's been said. At least most of it, you know, I can go back and forth between conversations and dwell on them for some time and just to understand what the meaning is to me. And so today I had a conversation, and it was very unpleasant, but I stood there, and I didn't scream, and I also didn't run away, although I would have liked to, right? There's a part in me that just wants to, you know, get really angry and aggressive sometimes. And maybe people feel that I could, but I just don't want to give them that, because it's actually a sign of weakness. You know, if I rise to a challenge of a broken man, then what does that say about me? You're not a threat to me. You're not a threat to anyone, because you live in fear. And then I go there to one guy and I say, hey, you don't belong here, and he acknowledges it, and then somebody else comes and I drop a comment about, you know, electric scooters or cars, and then he picks that up and says, hey, did you say something about my electric scooter? And then I know, okay, it was his, and then I say, well, basically. And then they start arguing their way out of it, and I say, well, these things are shit, and I studied environmental protection. And, you know, I had the chance to work for the state, and the state said, hey, you know, this job as an environmental protectionist, you know, for the state, your job would be to exchange all the trash vehicles that are there to, you know, clean the streets and collect rubbish, should be replaced with electric cars. And I think, wait, that's your idea of environmental protection? Alright, I mean, it's really just about money. I mean, you're really not interested in environmental protection, because nobody in his right mind would suggest such a thing unless there's just the industry involved. So they're basically everywhere, right? The industry has their little fishy fingers in everything. And then we have a conversation about that, and I just think this is so pointless, like, because they're just gonna argue. So, you know, I know everything they have to say, because it's been said to me a million times by myself and by others. I know these conversations inside out, and I'm conscious about all the things. So yeah, sure, having to go through this is a little bit annoying. But then you say, you know what, let's just stick it out, and then just leave on my own terms, because if he can chase me away, then I lose, and then he thinks he won, and you know, these are the little games that you as a warrior have to play these days. Well, that's just how it is, because we're also a warrior of lights, hearts, and all that kind of stuff. And so, I stood my ground while he was saying that, I basically know nothing of work or hard work, and all I'm doing is just playing around on my parents' money, and then I say, you have no idea, man. Nobody supports me. Everything's weird and crazy, and I'm basically on my own. You know, with all the shit that people give me, and everybody gives me their shit, and I'm still smiling more than you do. While you're living the life that's being advertised, right? You're hardworking, you get money for it. I've worked for. How old are you? And I say, yeah, I was born in '89. Yeah, I started working. And I've worked ever since, and now I have a bit of money. Yeah, and you're sitting around on a bench and drinking alcohol and smoking cigarettes. While I'm standing strong, doing my workout, and still doing the job that I chose. And then he says, yeah, that's pretty comfortable for you. I said, oh yeah, is it? And then he says, I say, at the moment, I'm not really interested in money, I think I said. Then he said, yeah, that's very... I also said, I think I have no money. I'm not quite sure, right? Maybe I'm trying to make myself look better. Who knows? It's also my perspective. I'm trying to take both perspectives, but it's mostly mine. And then he says, yeah, that's a pretty comfortable situation. And I think, are you kidding me? I'm literally ripping my heart out. I mean, nobody really supports me. Sure, my parents, I always put that in air quotes, just for show, I'm distancing myself. Which I am. But they do support me. And because they support me, I can do what I'm doing. People have money, and they give it to the things that they want to see grow. Apparently, my parents want to see me grow, but my parents are also people. People that have money, and that want to do something with that money. What do you do with money? You invest it in things that help you grow yourself. And I do help my parents to grow, because I keep going back there. I could have left a long time ago, but I decided to also give back, right? I receive, I give back. And I carry a lot of shit. I carry a lot of shit from people, and I still smile about it. And sometimes I have to fight these battles, which may be little, but they're also big. And then you go there and you talk to people, and they still give you shit. And you have to take it, and then you walk it home into your apartment, and then you continue making content. And work to feel good about it. And so yeah, I'd like to be amongst people, but I also like to be on my own. Because if I'm constantly amongst people, it's just too much. It's not even the pain they're causing me, but it's also seeing their pain. I cannot deal all the time with everybody's problems, because I also have my own problems. I also have work that I want to do, right? I have books to write, I have things to record, I also want to go into nature. I feel like I'm being drawn into nature, right? Hiking, communicating with spirit, looking for visions. This is a full-time job. That's what I said to him. He said, oh, basically, you say to people I'm a content creator, and they say, well, so you're doing nothing. It's like, are you fucking kidding me? And then he comes around and says, yeah, if you would do my job for a week, you wouldn't last. If I would do your job for a week and you would do my job, he says, I wouldn't last. And then I say to him, "Oh yeah? How would you do my job? Could you write a book in 1 week?" Yeah, he gets a little bit silent at that point. I try to explain to them sometimes that a society also needs people like me who want to give what they want to give. Because he's not really giving. He's earning money. He's giving to the industry, and the industry is destroying the planet. You know, I'm trying to give to the people as much as I can, so that they can use my experiences, learn and grow with them, and then start doing something else. You know, learn how to be a man, instead of a miserable guy who sits around because he gave up hope and drinks alcohol and smokes cigarettes. And I don't even have to judge him for that, because he already does it himself. And so in these situations, when you walk through a fair and you're being hammered with, you know, music, the smells of food, people talking, all this kind of stuff, right? It's very, very nice to know how to be the observer, to walk through there without being dragged into it, right? I'm really wondering if I would have had money that day. Let's say I would have hundreds of euros on my account. Would I have spent some there? Well, at this point, I actually think it's unlikely, because I would consider it a waste of energy. You know, I'd rather buy food and then cook it at home than to eat the shit people mash together, right? I'd rather cook my own cake than buying it from a bakery, because what's the point? Machines have made this. You know, I'd rather make it myself. And that's why I also rather use ceremonial cacao than cacao powder, because it's just, you know, it's been processed less. I try to go natural. And the interesting thing also about this video is, first of all, I like the style, like this kaleidoscope. And I also like the transition, that you go from, you know, we first went to the fair, and then to the forest, and then we hiked for another 1 to 2 hours, and then I slacklined. So, you know, the modern man has to do a kind of a split. He has to show presence and show his flag in society to show that I'm there. So I have certain skills, I know how to slackline. So I go to places where people can see me, and then I slackline there. So that people realize, oh wow, that's a bit of a different standard, because basically I'm the only one who slacklines here. Or also who knows how to slackline. Nobody else does that, especially not alone. And I simply go to places on my own. I've been doing this for years, and I slackline there on my own. And that's also the challenge, because when I go and slackline on my own, people, right, are attracted to me. Some people come, they want to have a conversation, and then I have to also choose. Who do I want to talk to? And who, like, how much do I want to give them? Today I went to the park and I had a frisbee with me. And I wanted to play frisbee, and then somebody came. You know, somebody was there, and I asked him, do you want to play? He said, nah, I'm busy with my phone. And then somebody else came, I said, hey, do you want to play? He said, yeah, sure. And then we started throwing frisbee. I mean, sure, he's not able to challenge me. Not really. Yeah, and then the conversation comes, and I already feel how he's drawn towards me. You know, now he wants emotional stability because he realizes I have something that he wants for himself. And then he says, hey, maybe we can meet up, you know, like make an appointment. And I just hold this thought for a while and I think, yeah, sure, I could do this. It's a possibility. You know, you kind of can see it coming at one point. Then I said, yeah, I think I have to decline. You know, I really like to be alone. Then I explain it a little bit so that he's not overly hurt. I say, you know, I'm somewhat like a lone wolf, right? I like to do things on my own. So I generally do not make appointments. You know, I like to meet people when life wants me to meet them, which is why I don't exchange numbers unless I'm really desperate. Or there's somebody where I say, hey, I actually like, you know, he wants to learn. So sure, if he feels like calling me, yeah, why not? But with most people, I just say, yeah, I don't feel like it. You know, I also like the surprise when I go to the park. Maybe somebody's gonna be there and maybe not. If I make an appointment, there's no surprise. And then it's gonna get annoying because then you're like merging into each other. But I'm not gonna be your jerk-off guy that teaches you all these things and then you can go around and pride yourself. Because the funny thing was, he already started to think about how he could use me. And that's just where I draw the line, right? You know, I've done these things for a long time already, I know how it works. Right, so he started saying, yeah, you know, he likes to throw the boomerang. Sure, I mean, he didn't really know what he was saying, but I heard it. And he said, yeah, maybe we can meet and then we can throw the boomerang together. And then when we go on holiday, you know, I can really shine by throwing the boomerang. It's like, what? Like, you don't know how to throw the boomerang on your own. And now you want to use me to figure out how to throw the boomerang so that you can boast about it with your friends. And he's never gonna tell them that I was the one who helped him to do it. But I'm not interested in throwing boomerangs that much. I mean, I could, if I had one, which I had once, but I think I threw it away. So, I mean, if you want to know how to throw a boomerang, then you have to teach yourself, man. You know, I'm not gonna be there. I wanted to play frisbee, and you were there. And then we played frisbee together. But I'm not gonna make appointments to play frisbee with you every time because... Right. What also happens is that if I go there infrequently, people don't know when I'm gonna be there. And they're literally gonna go more often because now they had one good experience in that park. And they're going to go to the park more often. Just because they think they're gonna meet me. And how I know that because I had the same experience already once. You know, I met somebody there, we played frisbee, it was nice. And I think we played one more time frisbee, and after that we just never met again. Because we didn't exchange numbers, so we also couldn't call each other. And I really prefer it that way. I prefer it that way because it allows me to do what I'm doing and let everybody do what they do. So sometimes I go through the city, but the next day I'm gonna go at a different time. And then the next day I'm just gonna avoid the city altogether. So I don't go every day to the same place. Right? I'm not gonna slackline every day at the same spot. Because if I go and slackline, then I want to slackline. If somebody else wants to slackline, then they have to buy their own slackline. You know, I don't have a problem if you once want to test it, but my slackline also isn't really for beginners. And sometimes you go with people and then they just keep you occupied in a conversation, but what I want to do is I want a slackline. Right? It's like literally doing the split between your own nature and other people's bullshit. You know, other people's trauma and I feel bad and blah blah blah. Right? It's like, what's the deal, man? What's the deal? Anyway. 38 minutes. Right, sometimes these things really turn out longer than I thought. Yeah, I think I'm going to stop it here. It's alright. Sometimes I just think I should talk a little less. But if there are things that have to be said, because it's still a good experience for me, but I also realize I simply have to go more into nature. Spend more times in and with nature, connect with nature. Do longer hikes, start spending more time in nature. Because my spirit really misses this. If you spend too much time with city people, you're just gonna get shit. And that's something that I'm getting anyway. But not really, right? You know, if I spend a lot of time with homeless people, then I'm gonna get a lot of shit. I rather want to spend time with people who actually want to grow, who want to do something, and not with people who are just stuck at, you're like this, blah blah blah. But yeah, sometimes I make advertisement for myself just by showing what I can do, that I can hold my ground, right, while others slouch off. I just stand there and smile at them. So yeah, you can web your own story around this. My voice certainly is one of my tools. Just the sheer... I mean, that's maybe something I still want to say, like, what's a fair? It's a way of the government. You know, that's what they used to do, is like, you know, all these kind of jugglers. They used to do it in the Middle Ages as well. They opened the gates to all these performers so that all the taxpayers had the feeling they were at least getting something out of this, right? And that's what's still happening. And that's why, you know, I see it for what it is. It's just hammering people with as much noise and sugar and food and fat as you can manage, and also alcohol, of course, and then turning them around and injecting a little bit of feeling, a little bit of excitement and adrenaline into them, but also making sure they're probably gonna come back for it next year again, and then they're gonna be excited and focus on it all year instead of just, you know, doing other things. But yeah, I mean, when that gets boring, maybe you'll start hiking, right? I mean, when you realize only eating sugar and bread from the bakery isn't enough anymore, or you're so sick and bloated that you simply have to change, well, you're either gonna change or you get surgery. Right? I have a swollen ankle because the mosquito did its thing. You know, I say it injected its healing liquid into my ankle and something's happening. To me, I say there's energy stuck. I have the feeling there's an angry spirit in there. I'm gonna go more into these topics at a later stage. But I cut an onion in half and I put it onto that place so that it can suck out those kinds of energy. Because we pick up all kinds of things in all kinds of places, and one way of getting rid of negative energy is certainly through walking barefoot at your own risk as usual. It's always your responsibility, so don't push it on others. But anyway, yeah, that's it with today's dose of Christopher.